In the windswept plains of Manchuria, the Japanese built a secret facility under the guise of public health, the Epidemic Prevention and Water Purification Department of the Kwantung Army. But history knows it as Unit 731, a place of horror, not healing. Near Pingfang, this sprawling complex had its own airstrips, railway and crematoria, all dedicated to a single brutal goal: developing biological and chemical weapons for Japan's imperial ambitions. To achieve this, they needed to experiment on living people. The secrecy was total. Locals were told it was a lumber mill. Staff were sworn to silence. Doctors and scientists, bound by duty to the emperor, committed atrocities in the name of science and war. Inside, victims were called maruta, logs stripped of humanity to make cruelty routine. This language allowed ordinary men to commit extraordinary evil day after day. The logs were used, disposed of, and their ashes scattered, their stories meant to vanish forever. Unit 731 stands as a chilling reminder: when science is weaponized, humanity is the first casualty. The world would only later learn the true extent of the darkness that festered behind those walls. The legacy of Unit 731 is a warning, one that history cannot afford to forget. Inside Unit 731, human suffering became data. Scientists infected prisoners with plague, cholera, and anthrax, then observed the agonizing results. Vivisections were performed on living victims without anesthesia to study disease progression. Most victims were Chinese civilians, but Soviets, Mongolians, and Koreans were also taken. Men, women, and children, all stripped of identity. At least 3,000 died in these experiments, though the true number may never be known. The cruelty extended beyond disease. Prisoners' limbs were frozen and thawed, flesh rotted away, and some were subjected to high-pressure chambers, centrifuges, and lethal X-rays. The suffering was relentless, each death a data point in a monstrous experiment. Unit 731's horrors spilled beyond its walls. Plague bombs were dropped on Chinese cities, causing deadly outbreaks and mass terror. These were not just tests, but acts of war, killing tens of thousands of civilians. The legacy of Unit 731 is not just in the numbers, but in the unimaginable pain inflicted on countless innocents. The echoes of their suffering still haunt the world today. The truth of Unit 731 is a testament to the depths of human cruelty when unchecked by conscience. At the heart of Unit 731 was General Ishii, a physician, microbiologist, and master manipulator. Ishii saw biological warfare as Japan's path to power and convinced the military to fund his vision. He was no rogue. He was executing national policy, fueled by a belief in Japanese superiority and imperial destiny. Under Ishii, the dehumanization of victims became routine, justifying the unthinkable. He fostered loyalty among his staff, convincing them their work was patriotic and vital. As Japan's defeat loomed, Ishii ordered the destruction of evidence and the murder of remaining prisoners. He staged his own death and vanished, determined to keep Unit 731's secrets buried. Ishii's legacy is not just in the crimes committed, but in the system of silence and complicity he created. The world would struggle for decades to uncover the full truth. The shadow of Ishii's actions lingers, a warning of what happens when ambition and ideology override humanity. After Japan's surrender, the world sought justice for wartime atrocities. Yet General Ishii and Unit 731's leaders escaped prosecution, not forgotten but protected. The United States, eager for biological warfare data, struck a deal: immunity in exchange for Unit 731's research. The men who orchestrated mass suffering returned to civilian life, many rising to prominence in medicine and industry. For the victims, there was no justice, only silence and denial. The Soviets held their own trials, exposing the horrors of Unit 731, but the West dismissed these as propaganda. The truth was spoken, but few listened. The pursuit of scientific advantage was prioritized over human rights and accountability. This moral compromise left a stain on post-war justice. The victims' voices were buried beneath Cold War politics. The legacy of Unit 731's immunity is a sobering lesson in the cost of expedience over ethics. For decades, Japan denied Unit 731's existence. Schoolbooks were silent, officials evasive. Survivor stories and Soviet records were ignored, creating a national amnesia. In the 1980s, journalist Seiichi Morimura's book The Devil's Gluttony broke the silence, sparking public debate. Evidence-mounted bones unearthed in Tokyo lawsuits from Chinese victims and growing calls for accountability. The government's denial slowly cracked in 2002. A Tokyo court finally confirmed Unit 731's existence. Names of thousands of unit members were released in 2018, but full acknowledgement remains elusive. legal battles continue, keeping the memory alive and forcing Japan to confront its past. The journey from denial to reluctant admission has been long and painful. For many, justice remains out of reach. The truth of Unit 731 is still a difficult subject for Japan and the world, but the silence has been broken and the victims' stories endure. Unit 731 is a stark warning about the dangers of unchecked nationalism and the corruption of science. Its doctors were not monsters, but professionals who let ambition and ideology override their duty to do no harm. The Nuremberg Code, established after the war, enshrined the principle of informed consent, an ethical line Unit 731 obliterated. The US decision to grant immunity for data set a troubling precedent. Justice can be sacrificed for strategic gain. This compromise undermined the very ideals the Allies claimed to uphold. Remembering Unit 731 is a moral obligation to honor the victims and guard against repeating such horrors. Their suffering compels us to demand that science serve humanity, not destroy it. The ruins at Pingfang stand as a silent warning. Never let history's darkest lessons be forgotten. The story of Unit 731 is not just history. It is a call to vigilance and conscience. We must never allow such atrocities to be buried in silence again.